Hi, I'm Chrissy and welcome back to another video. In this week's video, I'm going to be talking about my resin fails and what not to do when working with resin, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the overly asked question as to what is wrinkling in resin and why does it happen? How can I make it stop? Because it's so annoying. It's called amine blushing, and I have a piece right here which it happened to, and I keep it like this because it's a reminder to me to do everything I can to make sure this doesn't happen. So what is amine blushing? Okay, so amine blushing is when your piece is set and you'll see in certain lights, so it's where you get that wrinkle effect on your resin. Can you see that as the light hits it? If this has happened to you, you know that as a resin artist, this is so frustrating because you can spend so many hours on a piece of work and then it comes out all wrinkly and you're like, why is this happening? What can I do to stop this? It's so annoying. The reason this happens is usually because of temperature, or temperature changes as it's setting. So if your resin is too hot and it's setting too quickly, this can happen. If it's too cold, this can happen also. So it's about getting that temperature right. Now, how do you do this? I hear you ask. So there's a few things you can do to help avoid amine blushing. Firstly, you can do what I do, which is get a dehumidifier. I'll show you the one that I've got. This is the one I've got. It was £9.95 off Amazon, I think. If I remember, I will link it down below. If not, just comment and let me know. But yes, this is what I've got. I need to get a new tablet for it, but this works amazingly. I've heard a lot of other people in this group use heat mats. I personally haven't needed to use them, so I can't give you my expertise on that, but I've heard they work really well, so that might be something to invest in as well. I've also noticed a little trick as well with amine blushing. Now, you can't always use this trick depending on what design you're going for, but I've noticed if you see it coming, if you see a wrinkle start to happen and your resin is not fully set, you can get a wooden stick and kind of like swirl it around in your piece and it takes it away and it doesn't come back. You have to time this right, but it is a little tip that does work. I've also noticed that if I mix my resin a little bit longer, it tends to not happen as much, so that's something to bear in mind too. In cooler temperatures as well, it's a really good idea to give your resin a little bath before using it. So just pop your bottles in some warm water for 5 minutes or so, and that can really help prevent this also. So what do you do if this happens? Can you fix it? Of course you can. I've not fixed this piece because it sits on my shelf as a reminder of what not to do, but you can fix it. You can sand it down and use different level of grits, and you basically sand it in a circular motion, wipe it off with soap and top coat it, and usually that gets rid of it. I can do a separate video on how to do this. If you'd find that useful, just let me know. But yes, I would say when you're a resin artist, amine blushing is a difficult one to crack. But basically, if you just make sure your environment is right when working with resin, usually it fixes this problem. So yeah, amine blushing is basically all about temperature control, and as you work with resin more, you'll learn what works and what doesn't with this. So just be patient with it. I know that it's really frustrating, but it can be fixed and it can be prevented. It's just about learning how to do that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was not mixing long enough. Now, I was definitely someone that did this all the time when I first started out, mainly because I'm impatient and I want to get to the fun part. But resin is expensive, so it pays to do it properly. Now, I tend to mix big pint cups of resin at a time now because I'm working on different orders. Even when you're mixing smaller amounts of resin, you want to make sure that you're mixing long enough. It pays to mix really, really slowly and for a longer time. So I tend to mix for around 7 to 8 minutes just to make sure that it's fully combined and fully mixed together. You'll notice when you're mixing resin, you'll see like streaks, and when it's ready, it's basically all clear. So that's what you're looking for when mixing resins. Just make sure that you are mixing long enough, because then it'll set properly as well. If you don't mix long enough, then your piece will come out bendy and it will just be a waste, and you don't want that to happen at all. I found I tend to put some music on in the background or a TV show on, and before you know it, it's all mixed up and it's ready to go anyway. Okay, the next thing is pouring too quickly. So for example, I usually have like 9 or 10 projects I have going on all at one time, and sometimes it's a case of I just want to get this done, but again, if you take the time to do it nice and slowly and nice and steady, it really does pay off in the end. So what can happen if you pour too quickly is it can actually cause all those micro bubbles to surface and create more bubbles, and you don't want that. Just take your time, pour it nice and slowly, nice and close to the mould. So say if this is your mould, don't be pouring up here. Make sure you're getting nice and close to the mould and doing it nice and slowly. This will help massively with bubbles. Okay, the next thing is adding too much alcohol, ink, or too much mica powders. So when you're starting out, it can be really difficult to know how much to use, but a little bit goes a long way. And always remember, you can always add more, but you can never take away. Again, if you add too much, it can cause your piece not to set properly, or it can make it be bendy as well, which you really don't want. The next thing I wanted to talk about was demolding too early. Guilty, absolutely guilty. Anybody else gets so excited about demolding? Because same. Especially when I first started out, in the morning, I would pour in the evening and run down the stairs in the morning, and I would just want to see what it looked like. But if you do this, you get fingerprints all over it, you can bend your piece, you can ruin your piece. It's just not worth it. Be patient, make sure you wait at least 24 hours and then demold. I know it's hard, I know it's hard. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was, don't compare yourself to other resin artists. It's really hard to do this sometimes, especially in a group of this huge size, and you see all these amazing artwork coming out all the time, and you can think, okay, I'm just a beginner, I don't know how to do these, and you can end up feeling really inadequate. But don't compare yourself to others. Like, I was absolutely rubbish when I started out, and I still make mistakes all the time now, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn. And just remember that you're on a different journey to someone else. You're not at the same pace as everybody else. Something you excel in, somebody else doesn't yet, or you know, the other way around. So just be encouraged that you can use this group to learn from each other, to grow with each other, and don't get stuck in a rut of comparing yourself. Instead, see it as being inspired. Those are just a few things that I've learned along the way. I'm thinking about doing a part 2 really, really soon. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video.